When you strip away everything else, what remains at the heart of mathematics? It's humanity's relentless pursuit of what's actually true. It's about confronting puzzles that seem impossible and refusing to walk away until you've found the answer. This particular year holds profound meaning for those of us who work in mathematics, because we're commemorating a full century since one of history's most brilliant minds entered the world. Alan Turing wasn't just another talented mathematician. His cognitive abilities placed him in a category inhabited by very few individuals across the entire 20th century. The story of his existence reads like a contradictio life filled with achievements so significant they remained hidden from public view for decades. Victories celebrated in classified government files, while tragedy played out in the open. Many people today recognize Turing's name because of his crucial role in deciphering the German Enigma encryption during the Second World War. What fewer people realize is that by the time he accomplished that remarkable feat, he had already cemented his reputation as someone whose mathematical capabilities bordered on the extraordinary. The world received Alan Turing on June 23, 1912. His formative years unfolded across two English locations. He spent portions of his childhood in Hastings, located in Kent, and other portions in Sherborne, situated in Dorset. From remarkably early on, young Turing exhibited the kind of intellectual gifts that make teachers take notice. His aptitude for mathematics and scientific thinking revealed itself consistently throughout his school years. Consider this remarkable detail. When Turing was merely 15 years old, he took it upon himself to distill the essential concepts of Einstein's theory of relativity into language his mother could understand. That's not the behavior of an ordinarily bright student. That's someone operating on an entirely different intellectual plane. His exceptional abilities opened doors that remain closed to most people. Turing earned a scholarship to one of Cambridge University's most prestigious institutions, King's College. The year was 1931 when he arrived to begin his undergraduate studies. Anyone who has studied the lives of intellectual giants recognizes a pattern. These individuals come alive when confronted with challenges that would intimidate others. Turing fit this pattern perfectly. Nothing brought him more genuine happiness than discovering a problem that demanded solving. True to the exceptional talent and ambitious spirit he demonstrated throughout his youth, Turing didn't choose simple problems to occupy his mind. Instead, he directed his formidable abilities toward one of mathematics' most notorious unsolved challenges. The problem had a German name that reflected its origins, and Dunks problem. In English, we call it the decision problem. This wasn't some obscure puzzle tucked away in an academic journal. This challenge had been presented to the mathematical community by David Hilbert, a German mathematician whose legendary status in the field was unquestioned. Hilbert had articulated this problem as the century turned from the 1800s to the 1900s, and it stood as one of the 20th century's most significant unanswered mathematical questions. Picture the scene. It's springtime in 1935. We're in Cambridge, at a location called Grantchester Meadows, where the River Cam flows through the landscape. Turing found himself in this setting, and it was here that he made the decision to challenge the mathematical titans of his era. What emerged from his thinking during this period would reshape entire fields of study. Turing engaged in a thought experiment. He imagined a machine, not a real, physical machine at first, but a conceptual one. This hypothetical device would read symbols printed on a strip of tape. Following a specific finite collection of rules, the machine would rewrite certain symbols or delete them entirely. Here's a fascinating detail about Turing's original conception. When he first described this process, he didn't actually envision a mechanical device at all. He pictured a human being mechanically following these operations without deviation or creativity. Turing had a specific term for this hypothetical person performing these rote computational tasks. He called them the computer. That's right, before computer meant a machine, it meant a person who computes. The mechanics of this imagined system worked as follows. You would present the machine with a problem requiring computation. Once set in motion, one of two outcomes would occur. Either the machine would eventually halt its operations and deliver the answer you sought, or it would continue running indefinitely because no answer to that particular problem exists. But Turing didn't stop at merely imagining this system. He went further and proved something mathematically that would shake the foundations of what mathematicians believe possible. Turing demonstrated, through rigorous mathematical proof, that you cannot ever know with certainty whether the machine will stop or run forever. To accomplish this proof, he constructed what became the definitive example of an undecidable problem, a problem for which no algorithm can determine the answer in all cases. This achievement was nothing short of astounding. What Turing had accomplished was a direct refutation of Hilbert's question about decidability. Hilbert had essentially asked whether mathematics could, in principle, provide algorithmic answers to all properly formulated mathematical questions. Turing proved the answer was no. His work revealed that mathematics contains inherently dark region zones of uncertainty that will forever remain beyond our reach, permanent barriers preventing us from achieving complete and total truth. The Turing machine model, born from this thought experiment by the River Cam, evolved into something far beyond its original purpose. It became one of the foundational pillars upon which computer science would be built. Many scholars argue that it represents the single most influential mathematical abstraction to emerge from the entire 20th century. The mind-bending detail? Turing was 22 years old when he accomplished this. After spending time at Princeton, Turing made his way back to Cambridge. Shortly thereafter, his career took a turn toward work that would, for decades, remain shrouded in official secrecy. He began employment with the Government Code and Cipher School, the organization responsible for breaking codes for the United Kingdom. To understand the significance of what Turing would accomplish in this role, we need to understand the challenge he faced. For many years preceding the outbreak of the Second World War, Germany's military forces had relied on a particular cipher machine for encrypting their confidential communications. This device was called Enigma. Physically, it was roughly comparable in size to a standard typewriter. The way an Enigma machine functioned was ingenious in its complexity. When you pressed a letter on the keyboard, that letter wouldn't appear directly. Instead, a completely different letter would illuminate on what was called the lamp board, a second set of letters built into the machine. This substitution created the encrypted code. The standard version of the Enigma machine possessed a mind-boggling number of possible configurations. We're talking about more than 150 million different ways the machine could be set up on any given day. What created this astronomical number of possibilities? Hidden inside each Enigma machine were 3 rotating cylinders called rotors. Every time an operator pressed a key, these rotors would turn, causing the internal wiring of the electrical circuit to rotate as well. This rotation completely transformed the circuit's configuration. The practical implication was profound. Pressing the identical letter multiple times would generate different encrypted outputs each time. A word containing double letters, in plain German say, whether for weather, might be encrypted in such a way that those repeated letters became entirely different characters in the coded version. For the Allied forces attempting to break these codes, Enigma represented a challenge of formidable proportions. Breaking codes isn't just technical work. It's intellectual warfare, a battle where mathematical insight and cunning strategy determine who wins. During wartime, the consequences of victory or defeat in this battle couldn't be higher. For someone like Turing, who thrived on exactly these kinds of challenges, the Enigma problem must have been irresistible. On the day immediately following Britain's official declaration of war against Germany, Turing reported for duty at Bletchley Park, the facility where Britain's code-breaking operations were centralized. His work on cracking the German Enigma cipher would prove essential to the war effort. That's not an exaggeration or patriotic hyperbole. It's historical fact. Turing's contributions operated on multiple levels. First, he achieved the initial breakthroughs that unlocked the naval version of the Enigma code, the variant used by German U-boats. This accomplishment had immediate, tangible consequences for Britain's survival. The nation depended on food and military supplies being transported across the Atlantic Ocean. German submarines were sinking these supply ships at an alarming rate. By breaking the naval Enigma code, Turing enabled Allied forces to anticipate and avoid these submarine attacks, keeping the supply lines open. But Turing didn't work alone, and his contributions extended beyond individual breakthroughs. Together with a colleague named Gordon Welchman, he designed an actual machine, not a hypothetical one, this time built specifically to demolish the German Enigma encryption. They called this device the bomb, a name that paid homage to an earlier code-breaking machine constructed by Polish cryptographers. The bomb exploited a weakness in how the Germans used Enigma. The codebreakers at Bletchley Park noticed that German encrypted messages frequently contained predictable phrases. Weather reports, for instance, tended to include certain standard terminology. The codebreakers would attempt to guess a short phrase. They called these educated guesses cribs that might appear somewhere within an Enigma encrypted message. Once they had a potential crib, they would feed this guess into the bomb. The machine was engineered to systematically test the countless different ways an Enigma machine could have been configured. By combining the principle of logical contradiction with Turing's extraordinary mathematical insights, the codes gradually eroded under analysis. Eventually, they cracked open. On days when everything aligned favorably, the bomb machine could identify the correct Enigma setting in as little as 15 minutes. 15 minutes to solve what would have taken human calculators years, if they could solve it at all. The year 1945 brought official recognition of Turing's contributions, though the recognition itself was necessarily vague. He received an Oberon Order of the British Empire, officially recorded as being for services rendered to the Foreign Office. The genuine reason for this honor remained classified as top secret material for another 3 decades, extending long past the date of Turing's own death. Professional historians who have studied this period extensively now believe that the collective work accomplished by the Bletchley Park codebreakers compressed the war's timeline by approximately 2 years. When you shorten a war of that magnitude by 2 years, you're not talking about an abstract achievement. You're talking about countless human lives saved, soldiers who came home, civilians who survived, children who grew up with parents instead of visiting graves. When the war concluded, Turing's contributions to human knowledge didn't cease. He accepted a position at the University of Manchester and continued producing hugely significant work across multiple domains. His focus areas included computing, and, perhaps surprisingly to those unfamiliar with the breadth of his interests, biology. He maintained this productive output until his death in 1954. When we trace the lineage of computer technology as we know it today, when we examine the theoretical foundations of artificial intelligence, we find Turing's fingerprints everywhere. He laid the groundwork for what would become our modern computational age. The first machines that we would recognize today as genuine computers, not specialized calculators, but general-purpose computing devices, these emerged from work in which Turing played a central role. Now we arrive at the part of the story that transforms from triumphant to tragic. September of 2009. 55 years had passed since Turing's death. The British government issued a public apology to Alan Turing. Why would a government apologize to someone dead for more than half a century? Because of what they did to him when he was alive. Turing was homosexual. In the era when he lived, British law criminalized homosexuality. When authorities discovered the truth about Turing's sexuality, they didn't respond with compassion or even indifference. They responded with cruelty disguised as science. The state forced Turing to undergo hormone treatment, a chemical castration regime that subjected his body to horrific changes. The government labeled him a security risk, as if the man who had protected Britain's security during its darkest hour had suddenly become a threat. They stripped him of his position as a codebreaker, ending his work in the field where he'd made such crucial contributions. How does such a story end? Tragically, desperately. Turing took his own life. The method carries its own haunting symbolism, bit into an apple he had laced with cyanide poison. A genius whose mind had helped save civilization from fascism, driven to suicide by his own government's persecution. It's almost unbearably sad. the waste of it, the injustice of it, the sheer human cruelty of it. Look around at the world we inhabit today. Computer technology doesn't just exist in our lives, it dominates them. It shapes nearly every aspect of how we function. Our cars contain computers that manage everything from fuel injection to collision avoidance. Our smartphones are computers we carry in our pockets, more powerful than machines that filled entire rooms during Turing's lifetime. Our desktops connect us to a global network of information. The rockets we send to space rely on computational power that would have seemed like fantasy a century ago. Try to imagine 21st century existence without computers. It's nearly impossible, isn't it? These machines facilitate our existence in ways we barely even notice anymore because they become so thoroughly integrated into the fabric of our daily reality. But here's what we need to understand about Alan Turing. When he conceived of his theoretical machine by the river at Grantchester Meadows, when he worked grueling hours at Bletchley Park breaking codes, when he laid the conceptual groundwork for the computing revolution, creating a world dominated by technology was never his objective. That wasn't what motivated him. It wasn't even something he particularly cared about. The practical applications, the world-changing consequences, the technological revolution his work would enable, these were byproducts, not goals. So what did drive him? What made Turing push forward through problems that would have stopped others? He cared about something more fundamental, more pure. Turing wanted to fill the gaps in human knowledge. He wanted to illuminate the dark places. He wanted to find what was actually demonstrably, provably true. He wanted the light of understanding to reach corners where only shadows had existed before. He wanted the truth, mathematical truth, logical truth, the kind of truth that holds firm regardless of politics or opinion or human preference. And he wanted the solution, not solutions to trivial problems, but solutions to the problems that defined the boundaries of what humanity could know and accomplish. That was Alan Turing, a man who sought truth for its own sake, who solved problems because they needed solving, who expanded the borders of human knowledge and capability simply because that's what his extraordinary mind compelled him to do. We remember him today not just as the hero of Bletchley Park, though he was certainly that, not just as the father of computer science, though that title fits him perfectly. We remember him as a reminder of both the heights humans can reach and the depths of injustice we can inflict. His mathematical legacy lives on every time we press a key on a keyboard, every time an algorithm processes information, every time a computer makes a decision based on logical rules. His personal tragedy reminds us that genius doesn't protect anyone from prejudice, that contribution to society doesn't guarantee humane treatment, and that we have a responsibility to learn from history's cruelties rather than repeat them. 100 years after his birth, Alan Turing's influence surrounds us so completely that we live inside the world his ideas helped create. Yet the man himself never sought that kind of monument. He sought something simpler and simultaneously more profound. The answer, the proof, the solution, the truth. In pursuing these abstract goals with singular determination, he changed everything. That's the paradox at the heart of Turing's story. A man who cared nothing for practical impact created perhaps the most practical impact of any 20th century mathematician. A man who sought pure truth gave us tools that reshaped civilization. A man persecuted for who he loved is now remembered for what he thought. The Turing machine remains a theoretical construct taught to computer science students worldwide. The bombs that cracked Enigma demonstrated that theory and practice could combine to achieve the impossible. The modern computers that descended from his foundational work connect billions of people across a planet he never lived to see so thoroughly networked. And the man himself, complex, brilliant, troubled, triumphant, tragic, stands as a testament to both human potential and human failure. We failed Alan Turing in his lifetime. We can honor him now by remembering not just what he accomplished, but what drove him. That endless, restless, beautiful pursuit of truth that defines mathematics at its purest. That's what he gave us. That's what endures. The search for answers. The refusal to accept that problems must remain unsolved. The conviction that darkness can be illuminated and truth can be found. That was his gift. That was his life. That is his legacy.